If you've ever had your driveway blocked by an entitled neighbor who thinks the rules don't apply to them, go ahead and hit that subscribe button because boy, do I have a story for you. And if you're watching this while hiding from your own neighborhood Karen, drop a comment below telling me your current hiding spot. I promise this revenge tale will be worth every minute. My name is Marcus Daniels, and until 6 months ago, I was living what most people would call a perfectly normal suburban life. 20 years in IT security had finally paid off with a comfortable management position that let me work from home 3 days a week. I'd bought a modest but nice house in Ridgewood Acres, a quiet neighborhood with good schools and reasonable property taxes. My garage had been converted into a home office years ago, so I parked in my driveway, a fact that will become very important to this story. Life was predictable, maybe even a little boring, until Patricia Winters moved in next door. Patricia, though I later learned everyone in her previous neighborhood called her parking lot Patricia, seemed nice enough during our first meeting. She was in her late 40s, immaculately dressed in what I can only describe as suburban chic, with that specific highlighted blonde bob haircut that somehow signals both I donate to charity and I will destroy your life over a minor inconvenience simultaneously. I'm just so thrilled to be in Ridgewood, she gushed during our first conversation over the property line. My last neighborhood was going downhill fast. You know how it is, the wrong sort of people moving in, property values threatened, but this street seems much more appropriate. I should have recognized the warning signs in how she emphasized appropriate while glancing at my modest Toyota parked in the driveway compared to her gleaming white Mercedes SUV. But I was raised to be neighborly, so I welcomed her to the area and even brought over a bottle of wine the following weekend. "How thoughtful," she said, barely glancing at the label before setting it aside. "Though I usually prefer Napa Valley vintages, this is European?" It was a $50 bottle from a boutique California winery, but I let the comment slide. Everyone's entitled to their preferences. The problems began 3 weeks after Patricia moved in, when she hosted what she called a small gathering of her closest friends from the club. In reality, it was 30 people in expensive casual wear drinking cocktails on her freshly landscaped backyard patio. I didn't mind the noise, it was a Saturday afternoon after all, but the parking situation quickly became problematic. Patricia's driveway held 3 cars, and street parking filled up fast. I returned from a grocery run to find a black BMW parked fully across my driveway entrance, not partially blocking it, completely blocking it. I parked temporarily on the street and walked over to Patricia's gathering. "Excuse me," I said, trying to keep my tone friendly. "Someone's parked across my driveway. I can't get in." Patricia was holding court with 4 women who all seemed to be competing for most expensive casual outfit. She barely glanced my way. "Oh, that must be Richard's car. He'll move it when he leaves." She turned back to her friends. "Anyway, as I was saying about the club president's wife, I need to park in my driveway now," I persisted. "I have frozen groceries." Patricia sighed dramatically before calling out, "Richard, you need to move your car for my neighbor." A man in his 50s, wearing a golf shirt that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget, sauntered over, martini in hand. "Can it wait? Trisha's just about to tell us about the Simpson disaster at the regatta. It's blocking my driveway completely," I explained. "I can't get in at all." Richard rolled his eyes but pulled out his keys. "Fine. The stories at these parties are always exaggerated anyway." As he walked away, I heard Patricia stage whisper to her friends, "So sensitive about his little driveway, you'd think someone with that house would be more accommodating." I should have recognized this as the beginning of a pattern, but I chalked it up to first-time hosting stress and overlooked the slight. The next incident happened just 3 days later. I came home from work to find Patricia's gleaming white Mercedes parked halfway across my driveway entrance. Not completely blocking it, I could still squeeze in if I was careful, but definitely encroaching by about 3 feet. I knocked on her door. No answer, though I could see lights on inside. I called the number she'd given me for neighborhood directory purposes. Straight to voicemail. After carefully maneuvering into my driveway with just inches to spare, I wrote a polite note. Hi, Patricia. Your car is partially blocking my driveway, making it difficult to get in and out. Would you mind parking fully on your side? Thanks. I placed it under her windshield wiper and went inside. The next morning, I found the note crumpled on my front step, with Patricia's Mercedes now parked completely within her property lines. Problem solved, or so I thought. 2 days later, it happened again. This time, the Mercedes was angled so it blocked about 4 feet of my driveway entrance. Again, I could squeeze in with careful maneuvering, but it was frustrating. I left another note, this one slightly more direct. Patricia, please do not park blocking any portion of my driveway. It's both inconsiderate and against City Ordinance 23.4. Thanks for understanding. The following day, the car was properly parked, but I received a text message. Got your passive-aggressive note. A simple, friendly conversation would have been more neighborly than quoting ordinances, don't you think? I responded, tried knocking, then calling before the first note. Just need clear driveway access. Her reply came quickly. Well, aren't we Mr. Important with our big driveway needs? It's barely a few inches, but I'll try to accommodate your special requirements. I showed the messages to my friend Derek when he came over that weekend. Derek had been my buddy since college and worked as a civil engineer for the city. Dude, she's marking her territory, Derek said, as we grilled burgers in the backyard. Classic passive-aggressive behavior. She's establishing dominance in the neighborhood. By parking badly? I asked. It's about making you adjust to her, not the other way around. Plus, she's testing boundaries to see what she can get away with. I shrugged it off. Well, she's parking correctly now, so maybe she got the message. Derek laughed. Just wait. This type never stops after one confrontation. Derek, as usual, was right. The pattern continued for weeks. Patricia would park normally for a few days, then accidentally encroach on my driveway entrance again. Each time I'd leave a note, she'd fix it temporarily, and the cycle would repeat. I tried different approaches. I left a plate of homemade cookies with a friendly note asking her to be mindful of the driveway. I offered to help her mark proper parking spots with chalk. I even suggested she could use part of my street frontage when she had guests, as long as my driveway remained clear. Nothing worked for more than a few days. In fact, the more accommodating I tried to be, the more deliberate her driveway blocking became. The situation escalated when I needed to leave for an early morning meeting and found her car positioned to block about half my driveway. I'd have to drive partly across her pristine lawn to get out. I called her cell phone repeatedly. No answer. Finally, I knocked loudly on her door until lights came on. Patricia answered in a silk robe, her face a mask of exaggerated concern. Marcus, it's 6:30 in the morning. Is there a fire? Your car is blocking my driveway again, I said, trying to keep my voice level. I have an important meeting and need to leave now. She peered past me at her car. Oh, that? You have plenty of room to get around it. I would have to drive over your lawn. Well, she said with a tight smile, sometimes we all have to make little sacrifices to be good neighbors, don't we? Like being woken up at dawn over a few inches of driveway space. Patricia, please just move your car, she sighed dramatically. Fine, let me find my keys and get decent. Some of us weren't planning to start our day yet. 10 excruciating minutes later, she moved her Mercedes precisely 3 feet, just enough that I could exit without damaging her lawn, but with barely inches to spare. There, she said sweetly as I got into my car. Was that worth the neighborhood disturbance? I arrived at my meeting stressed and 10 minutes late. That evening, I came home to find a letter in my mailbox from the Ridgewood Acres Homeowners Association. As I read it, my blood pressure skyrocketed. Patricia had filed a formal complaint against me for creating a hostile living environment through aggressive behavior, making excessive noise at unreasonable hours, and making threats regarding parking. The letter requested my presence at the next HOA meeting to address these serious concerns. I was furious. Not only was Patricia deliberately antagonizing me with her parking, but she was now trying to paint me as the aggressor to the HOA. That night, I installed a security camera aimed at my driveway. Over the next 2 weeks, the camera caught Patricia blocking my driveway 6 more times, always seemingly positioned with careful precision to be annoying, but not quite a total blockage. When I presented this evidence at the HOA meeting, Patricia had a ready explanation. "I'm still getting used to parking in the new space," she told the board with a perfect blend of embarrassment and charm. "And honestly, I've been under such stress with Marcus constantly monitoring me and leaving threatening notes that it's affected my concentration." "Threatening notes?" I interjected. "I've only asked you to stop blocking my driveway." The HOA president, an older gentleman named Walter, who I later learned played golf with Patricia's brother-in-law, smiled condescendingly. "Mr. Daniels, we understand driveway access is important, but perhaps this situation calls for a bit more neighborly flexibility. Miss Winters is still acclimating to our community." I showed them the video evidence, clear timestamps of Patricia's deliberate parking patterns, but somehow the conversation kept shifting to how I should be more accommodating. "The recordings themselves seem rather invasive," noted another board member. "Filming your neighbor's property without consent raises privacy concerns." I left the meeting with a warning about my aggressive approach to conflict resolution and a suggestion that I extend greater courtesy to new community members. Patricia's smirk as I walked past her told me everything I needed to know. She'd won this round completely. When I got home, I found her Mercedes parked with its rear bumper perfectly aligned to block exactly half my driveway. It was so precisely positioned, it couldn't possibly be accidental. That was the moment something snapped inside me. 20 years in IT security had taught me one crucial lesson. When conventional security measures fail, you need a more creative solution. The next day, I called in sick and began researching city ordinances, property boundaries, and most importantly, the exact legal definition of my property line and driveway access rights. My property survey showed something interesting. The concrete apron that connected my driveway to the street extended 6 inches beyond what most would consider the edge of my driveway. This small strip of concrete, technically part of my property, but visually appearing to be part of the street parking area, was precisely where Patricia kept positioning her car. I called Derek for advice. "Legally speaking, that apron extension is your property," he confirmed after reviewing the survey documents. "Anything you install there would be within your rights as long as it doesn't create a public hazard or violate building codes." That evening, I sketched out a plan. If Patricia wanted to play property boundary games, I could play too, but with 20 years of security system design experience on my side. First, I consulted with a lawyer who specialized in property disputes. I showed him my documentation, the video evidence, and Patricia's pattern of behavior. His assessment was clear. I had the right to protect access to my property, provided I didn't create a hazard or damage others' property intentionally. Next, I reached out to a former client who specialized in custom mechanical solutions for high-end security systems. I explained my situation without going into specific details about my plans. He referred me to a discreet fabrication shop that could build what I needed. The solution I designed was elegant in its simplicity. A hydraulic system embedded in that 6-inch strip of my concrete apron, connected to pressure sensors that could detect when a vehicle was positioned above it. Once triggered, small metal posts would rise from the concrete. Not enough to damage a vehicle, but enough to make it impossible to move the car without retracting them. The system would only activate when a vehicle remained stationary over the sensors for more than 5 minutes, allowing normal traffic to pass without issue. It would also record each activation with a timestamp and photo, providing documentation of each incident. The installation took 3 days, during which I parked on the street and covered the work area with utility maintenance. Signs that I'd had professionally printed. Patricia watched suspiciously from her window, but never came out to question the work. The fabrication and installation cost me nearly $8,000. But as I watched the crew finish the immaculate concrete work that concealed the system, I considered it money well spent. The control panel was discreetly installed inside my garage, giving me complete oversight of the system. The final touch was a small, official-looking sign at the edge of my property. Warning: automated driveway protection system in use. Unauthorized vehicles may be temporarily immobilized. Property owner not responsible for delays or inconvenience. Patricia's reaction to the sign was immediate. She marched over while the installation crew was packing up their tools. "What exactly is this system?" she demanded, gesturing at the sign. "Just a security measure," I replied casually, "to ensure clear driveway access at all times." "And what does immobilized mean exactly?" Her eyes narrowed. "It means exactly what it says," I said with a smile, "but I'm sure it won't affect you as long as you're parking correctly." She huffed and walked away, pulling out her phone. I imagined she was already calling her contact at the HOA. Sure enough, Walter from the HOA showed up an hour later. "Mr. Daniels, we've received concerns about some sort of device you've installed?" I showed him the property survey, the legal documentation, and explained that the system was fully contained within my property boundaries. "It doesn't extend into the street or sidewalk," I explained, "and it only activates when someone blocks my driveway for an extended period. It's designed to protect my legal right to access my property." Walter looked uncomfortable. "But what exactly does it do?" "It's a standard driveway protection system," I said vaguely, "similar to what many businesses use to prevent unauthorized parking, all fully compliant with city code." He left unsatisfied, but without any concrete objection he could raise. The system was on my property, designed by licensed professionals, and addressed a documented problem. For 4 days, Patricia parked meticulously within the street parking space, careful to stay well clear of my driveway apron. I almost thought she had finally gotten the message. Then came Saturday, the day of her monthly social brunch that she'd been telling neighbors about all week. Cars lined both sides of the street, and as guests arrived, parking became increasingly scarce. I was working in my home office when I heard the distinctive sound of Patricia's Mercedes pulling up outside. Through my window, I watched her park in what had become her signature position, half blocking my driveway. She emerged from her car, surveyed the positioning with satisfaction, and walked into her house without a second glance at my warning sign. I smiled and continued working, keeping one eye on the security camera feed on my second monitor. The system was designed to activate after 5 minutes, giving someone who accidentally encroached time to move their vehicle. 5 minutes passed, then 6. At precisely 6 minutes and 20 seconds, I heard the barely audible hydraulic hiss as the system activated. 4 small but sturdy metal posts, each about 4 inches high, rose from the concrete directly beneath Patricia's rear tires, gently lifting that side of her car approximately 2 inches off the ground. The Mercedes wasn't damaged. The posts had protective rubber caps, but it was now impossible to drive away. The system had worked perfectly. Her car was immobilized exactly as designed. I continued working, waiting for the inevitable. 45 minutes later, I heard Patricia's front door open and the sound of her heels clicking on her driveway. She was escorting a guest to their car when she noticed her Mercedes wasn't sitting quite right. The shriek that followed was so loud it might have violated noise ordinances. I stepped outside, coffee mug in hand, the picture of casual concern. "Everything okay, Patricia?" She whirled to face me, her carefully applied makeup now contorted with rage. "What have you done to my car?" she screamed, pointing at the slightly elevated rear end of her Mercedes. "I haven't touched your car," I replied calmly, "but it looks like you parked over my driveway protection system. Did you not see the warning sign?" Her guest, a woman in an expensive tennis outfit, was now staring open-mouthed at the scene. "Fix this right now," Patricia demanded. "I'd be happy to deactivate the system," I said reasonably, "as soon as you acknowledge that you've been repeatedly and deliberately blocking my driveway despite multiple requests to stop." "This is vandalism. I'm calling the police." She pulled out her phone with shaking hands. "That's your right," I nodded. "While we wait for them, would you like to see the video documentation of the 17 times you've blocked my driveway in the past month? And the legal documentation confirming this system is fully within my property boundaries and complies with all relevant ordinances?" Patricia's face cycled through several interesting colors as she processed the situation. Her guest was now slowly backing away toward the house. "Tricia, I think I'll check on that quiche," she mumbled before hurrying inside. The police arrived 20 minutes later. Officer Rodriguez was professional as Patricia hysterically accused me of damaging her vehicle and creating a torture device to target her. I calmly showed him my documentation, the property survey, legal opinions, system certification, and most damning of all, the video compilation of Patricia's month-long campaign of driveway blocking. Officer Rodriguez examined the system, verified that it was indeed on my property, and confirmed that the car showed no signs of damage. "Ma'am," he finally said to Patricia, "I don't see any evidence of vandalism or property damage. The system is on private property and appears to be functioning as designed." "But he's trapped my car," Patricia wailed. "You parked partially on his property," Officer Rodriguez pointed out. "The warning sign clearly indicates that unauthorized vehicles may be immobilized. So he can just kidnap my car like this?" Her voice had reached a pitch that probably confused neighborhood dogs. "Mr. Daniels," Officer Rodriguez turned to me, "are you willing to deactivate the system now?" "Of course," I said reasonably, "as soon as Ms. Winters acknowledges that she's been repeatedly blocking my driveway and agrees to stop." Patricia looked like she might spontaneously combust. "Perhaps," the officer suggested diplomatically, "you two could put this agreement in writing to prevent any future misunderstandings?" 20 minutes and one hastily drafted document later, Patricia signed a statement acknowledging her inadvertent pattern of partially blocking neighboring property and agreeing to maintain proper parking alignment with respect to adjoining driveways. I deactivated the system, the posts quietly retracting into the concrete, allowing Patricia's Mercedes to settle gently back to the street surface. As Officer Rodriguez prepared to leave, Patricia made one last attempt. "I want it on record that I'm filing a complaint with the HOA about this death trap." The officer looked tired. "Ma'am, HOA disputes are civil matters. From a law enforcement perspective, there's no violation here. I suggest you park within designated areas in the future." The brunch guests who had gathered at Patricia's windows quickly dispersed as she stormed inside. The following week brought an emergency HOA meeting about my driveway protection system. Walter was clearly prepared for a confrontation, but I came armed with an unexpected ally. Derek had arranged for a representative from the city planning department to attend. "Mr. Daniels' system is fully compliant with city ordinances," the representative explained to the stunned HOA board. "It's contained entirely within his property boundaries, creates no hazard to public sidewalks or roadways, and serves a legitimate property access protection purpose." Walter attempted to argue that the system violated HOA aesthetic guidelines, but I was prepared for that too. Section 5.3 of the HOA covenant specifically exempts security systems designed to protect property access from decorative and aesthetic requirements, I noted, sliding copies of the relevant pages across the table. My system qualifies under that exemption. The meeting ended with the HOA reluctantly acknowledging they had no grounds to demand removal of my system. As spring turned to summer, an interesting transformation occurred in our neighborhood dynamic. Patricia began parking with almost geometric precision, leaving a good 2 feet of clearance from my driveway at all times. More surprisingly, other neighbors who had previously given Patricia a wide berth started stopping by to chat with me. "We've been dealing with her type at every HOA meeting for years," confided Ellen from across the street. "Someone finally standing up to her has been refreshing." Even more satisfying was the gradual erosion of Patricia's social standing. The story of her Mercedes being caught by my driveway system spread throughout the neighborhood, becoming the kind of local legend that gets retold at block parties and neighborhood gatherings. Patricia tried to counter by spreading rumors that I was unstable and had booby-trapped the street, but the obvious precision and professionalism of my system, combined with her now documented history of parking violations, made these claims fall flat. 3 months after the incident, Patricia put her house on the market. She moved out 6 weeks later, reportedly to a gated community across town. I heard through neighborhood gossip that she'd told her real estate agent that Ridgewood Acres had declined significantly and was no longer the right environment. The family that moved in afterward, a young couple with twins, were delightful. They invited the whole street to their housewarming party and made a point of parking considerately. I've kept the driveway protection system in place, though it hasn't been activated since Patricia's Mercedes. The small warning sign serves as both a practical notice and a neighborhood conversation piece. Several neighbors have even asked for the contact information of the security company that installed it. The total cost of my driveway protection system was $7,856.42. The legal consultation was another $1,200. Add in the time spent researching, documenting, and dealing with the HOA, and you might wonder if it was all worth it. But watching Patricia's face as she realized someone had finally found a way to enforce a boundary she couldn't manipulate, charm, or bully her way past? Absolutely priceless. So if you're dealing with your own neighborhood Patricia or parking lot Karen, remember this. Sometimes the most effective revenge isn't about escalation or confrontation. It's about creative problem solving and an $8,000 investment in your peace of mind. Oh, and one more thing. I had the entire hydraulic system removed a week after Patricia moved out. Those 4 posts, they were never connected to anything. The whole system was essentially an elaborate bluff, just some stage hydraulics controlled by a smartphone app. The only real part was the warning sign. Sometimes perception is the most powerful security system of all. If you enjoyed this story of neighborly revenge, hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments about your own HOA nightmares. Until next time, remember, good fences make good neighbors, but better boundaries make for quieter streets.